Hello and welcome to the inaugural episode of Teaching Tuesdays, which is a new teaching series offered by the Media and Education Center at the National World War II Museum in New Orleans. My name is Dr. Kristen Burton, and I'm the Teacher Programs and Curriculum Specialist at the World War II Museum. And joining me is my co-host.
I'm Rob Wallace. I'm the other half of the teacher support team. I'm the STEM education specialist at the National World War II Museum.
Yes, and between Rob and I, we are going to be joining you each month with new pre-recorded videos that look at and explore different ways you can teach the history of World War II, both in a physical classroom and online. And following the release of these pre-recorded segments, we will engage in interactive discussions with teachers across the United States through our social media platforms and through a brand new Google Classroom set up by the museum staff. And now to take a look at some of these platforms through which you can interact with museum staff, Rob is going to give us a look at this new Google Classroom.
Now you all are probably much better at Google Classroom than we are by necessity. We've made a Google folder, which if you email us, we will share with you. And every Teaching Tuesday, we will add resources to it. Right now, what we have in it, you'll see today are some real world science resources that I've put in there, and then a legacy and liberation timeline that Kristen has put in there. We also have a Google Classroom through which we'll be able to do Hangouts. And that's right here. Let me go to the main page so you can see, here's the class code. You can email us for that class code too if you miss it, but there's the class code and you can join, and then some of those Teaching Tuesdays we'll announce on the Facebook page. We'll have Google Hangouts there. Kristen mentioned that we will have these interactions afterwards. So here is the first date, a week from the release of this video, from noon. We'll have a Google Hangout, and we'll have the Facebook page that will be there for you to post. Of course, you can contact us anytime. You email us or send a message, a flare, an owl, whatever you need to get help. We'll be happy to help and support you.
All right, thank you, Rob. We're going to take a very quick look at one of the popular lesson plans in our Liberation and Legacy curriculum volume. Now, the timeline, the visual timeline, is one of the most frequently mentioned favorite lessons that teachers bring up to us. And within the Google Drive folder that Rob just showed you, you will find, if you open up the Liberation and Legacy timeline lesson, you will see these 4 files. Within them, you will see 3 different Google Slides links, each one with the picture, the date, and the description. If someone is not familiar with the visual timeline lesson plan, the full lesson plan is available on the www.classroom.org website. And in that, it will outline the procedures, the assessment, and also all of the ELA, Common Core, and National History standards that the lesson meets. Now, the lesson was originally developed for in-classroom use. And when teachers have the physical cards in their hands and the physical pictures in their hands, it's much easier to just spread them out across a series of desks and have students put them in the correct order. Considering the limitations now presented to us because of the COVID-19 pandemic, interactive lessons within a classroom in which students are moving pieces of paper around and touching things becomes harder to do, or flat out impossible if you were teaching in a virtual or hybrid format. Taking this into consideration, this is one way you may be able to adapt this lesson to a virtual classroom. So using Google Slides, you can open up the different files and find, for example, a series of slides with the different descriptions that you would otherwise find in the curriculum kit. And what you can do is share these files with your students. If you're teaching virtually, you can share them through a Google Drive or a Google Classroom of your own that you may have set up. As you see them here, they appear in the same order that they appear in the curriculum volume. Incidentally, the images, the descriptions, and the dates all align with each other. So if you simply copy and paste these files and send them to your students, the lesson's already complete, just so you know. But to make it a little more difficult and challenging, you can move these slides around. And as Rob said, you all are very familiar with Google Classroom, Google Slides, Google Docs, and all of the different tools offered to you through these platforms. This is just one example. And in our interactive elements, I would love to hear different ways that teachers have been adapting these lessons, possibly even this very lesson in a virtual format. But you can simply move these around just to shake them up a little bit. So the students get the description: members of the United States Army Nurse Corps who gained notoriety as the Angels of Bataan during the Japanese invasion of the Philippines are liberated from internment camps and sent home to the United States. That's the description. Well, let's see what the images are. And again, they are in the same order that they appear in the curriculum kit and do correspond with the particular dates. But that image would appear fourth in line. But again, you can certainly move these around, shake it up, so your students won't be, make it a little more challenging, but you know your students best. And then finally, the third component that they need to add to this is the corresponding date. Now, because this is a lot of information to keep track of, because everything is separated out into separate files, in this folder you will see the key, the grading key that you need to know the image, the description, and the corresponding date. And again, when you gain access to this particular lesson, everything will be in the order that it appears in the curriculum kit.
One way that I could see teachers using this, Kristen, is, after they mix it up, they could have, let's say they have 5 groups of kids, they could have them work in a group on making their own slideshow. And I think virtually this might be a little harder than it is in person. So I would give kids a clue and say, put the captions with the pictures and then worry about the dates, but then they could make their slideshows and they could share them across groups and, have a whole class discussion about where they differ and what their reasoning is, what their thinking is.
Absolutely. The way you can have students put these together, and like Rob said, you can adjust this lesson to meet the needs of your classroom. So you could put, say, the dates and the descriptions together, or the date with the image. Well, what description does this go with? You can move these things around, and it is a pretty adaptable lesson plan in a virtual format. You can have the students then put all 3 elements into their own slides in a separate Google Slideshow file. You can do it in a Google Doc. Like Rob mentioned, you can have the students put the image, date, and description together and then have them write a few sentences. What clues in the description made them think it went with that picture? And then you can have a discussion in this particular format, whether in small student groups conducted virtually or in a larger full classroom discussion if it's conducted over Zoom or in another format. So that's one example of a way you can apply the visual timeline lesson plan from the Liberation and Legacy curriculum into a virtual format. There are other teachers who have said that they've adapted it virtually through other platforms, such as Flipgrid, which is something that we can certainly discuss during the interactive element of the Teaching Tuesdays coming up next week.
Yep.
But this is something that you can use, and know that there are a number of ways to take lesson plans originally written for a physical classroom environment and adapt them to a virtual classroom. And also know you can reach out to us at any point with any questions or concerns, or share your ideas. We love hearing how teachers take these materials presented by the museum and apply them to their own classrooms. So we love to hear your thoughts, any questions that you may have about applying these materials to a virtual classroom. We're here to help. This is what we're here for. So know you can email us at any time and we will get back to you as soon as possible. But each of these slideshows with the different corresponding elements and the key for grading this assignment is all available in that Google Drive folder that we will share with you. And you are free to adapt, use, and apply these lesson materials in any way that best fits the needs of your classroom. Here to give us an example of applying a few lesson plans from our real world science curriculum is Rob Wallace.
Thanks, Kristen. All right, so I want to show you how some of these might work, either in a virtual classroom or even in a socially distanced classroom. It might be, not possible to have all the kids gather around and work close in a group together. So you might want to do this virtually on a computer. So in this virtual classroom, I've made some assignments. So let's go through the necessity cards first. That's a great activity in the real world science curriculum, which you can also get at the WW2 Classroom site, where students look at a card that represents a real World War II technological challenge, and students need to meet that challenge. So the students are assigned those here, okay? And let me show you what they look like. So here's the assignments. These are Google Jamboards, and Google Jamboards are a lot like Google Slides, but they're made for collaborative work rather than presenting ideas. So the students would, for example, look at this one, which is loading very slowly, but it's a question about air pressure. So students would be asked, how would you pressurize an airplane? In most airplanes in World War II, there was no air pressurized system in it, so they had to wear an oxygen mask. And that was very cumbersome and hard, and it was very cold. So how would they pressurize an airplane? So let's say there's 5 students in your group. They each would brainstorm an idea and then together discuss which they thought was the best idea. And they develop that best idea here with a diagram of how that solution might work. And then finally, they would come up with 3 advantages and 3 problems with their solution. Now I've made it so that every student has access to all of these. So what you could do is once students have turned in their Jamboard, you could have students go back and look at each other's Jamboards and add some sticky notes of their own to the ideas. So let's say they saw the diagram here of the solution. In this case, this is about handheld generators, so that people could have light and electricity just right on hand when they needed a radio or a flashlight. Students can make a sticky note and type feedback. And put their sticky note right on, the diagram to share their ideas. And they could also add sticky notes to add things that they think are advantages or disadvantages of these ideas too. So that's how you would use Google Jamboard in this case. I do have one other example of an activity where we just made a slide. And there's an activity in real world science where students make a solar still. And it's really a lesson about the water cycle and how a solar still is kind of a simple model of the water cycle. So in this activity, students would look at this diagram that's unlabeled, and they'd have to move the words over to the right spot. So that's where condensation goes, and the delta is right over here. So you would have students complete the diagram, and then on the next page, it asks them to say which parts of the solar still correspond to which parts of the water cycle. And, you know, if they use this still, you know, to take this salt water and purify it, where would they get the water, the pure water from? And of course it would be in the cup. So if you have access to Pear Deck, you might want to make these slides into Pear Deck slides. But anyway, this is a way that you could ask some simple questions with diagrams from the real world science activities. We're just trying to take the tools that are available to you and show you how you can modify some of our lessons there. So I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Burton.
All right, thank you, Rob. Again, these are just brief introductions to a few options you can use in taking these lesson plans produced by the Media and Education Center at the National World War II Museum into your teaching. Given the upheaval caused in the past year to teaching approaches and traditional strategies, we want to offer different means of flexibility and adaptability to teaching as the demands on your own teaching changes so suddenly sometimes. As things progress, whether you are back in a classroom, whether you are teaching online, or whether you're doing both and possibly all at the same time, we are on hand to help. And we would like to spark a conversation, and we certainly hope that this video does exactly that. In addition to starting a conversation, possibly even offering a few new ideas and approaches that you can add to your own arsenal of teaching strategies. So please join us next week as we will begin the interactive element of the Teaching Tuesdays programming. Both Rob and I will be on hand to meet with and discuss with teachers, either through chat discussions on our Facebook group page, which is designed just for teachers, and it is a closed group only for teachers. And you can access the link here. In addition to chat discussions through our Facebook group, we can also set up video face-to-face chats through Google Hangouts. So you may be able to meet and discuss with us, as well as other teachers who are facing similar challenges as this pandemic continues to change our lives. So thank you for watching today. Certainly hope this presentation has been helpful. And at the very least, hopefully it sparks some interest in continuing the discussion. Please join us next week online for the first interactive element of our Teaching Tuesdays, which will begin at noon Central. We hope to see you there, but please feel free to email us in the meantime. From Rob and myself, thank you very much, and we look forward to chatting further. Thank you.
Hey, everybody.